Thank you. I can see that there's some writing here on the screen. It says gracias, so I will start by saying gracias to everyone for coming here today. And I want to say a big gracias to Andres and to his team for organizing this amazing event. It's my first time in Mexico. I'm very honored and glad to be here. And primero Dios, it will be not my last time here as well. What is love? This has been the question of my life. It has followed me unceasingly. At its heart lies another question, more important to me still. Am I someone capable of being loved? I ask these questions because my mind had a different childhood to that of most. Today, I'm a writer. I have a life filled with friends and a loving relationship. I live in Paris, city of wine and art and history, but I did not start out there. Life for me began in a small, poor, working-class part of London. I grew up a small boy in what became a very large family. I'm the eldest of 9 children. Perhaps that's why, having to keep track of all of my siblings, I became so good at numbers. I was unlike the other children. I didn't play like a little boy plays. I didn't smile like a little boy smiles. I hardly talked at all. Instead, I counted. People made no sense to me. They were too big, too loud, too erratic. I preferred the company of numbers. They I could understand. Every number to me has its own shape, its own color, its own texture, its own personality. 4 is shy, like me. 37 is lumpy, like oatmeal. 111 is bright and shiny. I could not play with the other children, so I played with numbers instead, and they became my friends. My medical condition remained a puzzle. It had no name, or rather, it went by a wide range of aliases. Extremely shy, I was called, because I was frightened of the other children. I did not know how to interact with them. Or highly sensitive, because I couldn't stand noise. I had to be protected from sudden surprises. My father, a very plain-speaking man, called me cack-handed. It's a British expression for somebody who is very clumsy, very poor coordination. For example, it took me many years to learn how to ride a bicycle, or even how to swim, as though the water did not want to carry me. In the 1980s, my years of childhood, high-functioning autism did not exist. Crying fits, panic attacks, epileptic seizures, all these and other symptoms described my mind to doctors, but the professionals drew a blank. I went to a normal school. There were no gifted child programs at the time. And because I could never find on the blackboard the colors of the words and the numbers as I saw them in my mind, I felt very bored. But I was a good student, a very good student. I learned very quickly. That was the upside of my condition. And I spent much time with my head in books. At the age of 8, I remember experiencing a very powerful sensation deep inside me and not knowing what it meant. Eventually, I discovered that this feeling is what people call loneliness. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was not alone, that I needed other people, and I wanted very much to have a friend. I would lie in my bed at night, staring up at the ceiling, wondering what it would be like to have a friend. I had no idea. In the playground at school, I began watching the other children, studying them closely, like a scientist, studying a strange species of animal, trying to figure out how they work, how they operate. I studied the other children, watched them as they played together, and in this way, little by little, my social skills improved. I learned how to look somebody in the eye, how to understand somebody's gestures, how to read their body English, how to tell a joke. I made the friendships of immigrant children. They too, different in their own ways, different color of skin, different accent. Our difference is what we had in common. But still I felt lonely. As a teenager, like all teenagers, I wanted desperately to fit in, to find my place. But there was no room for me anywhere. I wanted to be close to someone. And at that time, understanding closeness to literally, I would stand very close to somebody in the playground or in the school, and I would stand so that I could feel the heat of their body against my skin. And for me, this is what it meant to be close to somebody. Of course, I still had very much to learn. But I did not learn this at university. At the age of 18, I decided to travel instead. I'd read somewhere that travel is what people do in order to find themselves. And at that time, I still had no clear sense of myself, of who I was, the kind of person I could one day be. My memory was composed of many fragments, bits and pieces of emotions and ideas without context to bring them all together into a unified whole. I applied instead with success to a volunteer scheme for young adults with handicaps and other difficulties. And I was posted to Eastern Europe, to a small country called Lithuania. And it's there that I taught English for 1 year. It was a turning point for me. My students, many of them were twice my age or more, made me feel welcome. In spite of my eccentricities, or perhaps because of them, they encouraged me, and my confidence grew. In my native country, I had always felt so strange and so different. But here, in Lithuania, in another land, another language, I felt less foreign. Plus, when I behaved a little oddly from time to time, I now had the perfect excuse. My students just considered it part of my being British. Difference, I now knew, needn't be a disability in itself. This experience put me in good stead for my next endeavour. Early in 2004, at the age of 25, I travelled to the city of Oxford in England. I'd spent the past winter learning something by heart, and now I was to go and recite it, what I had learned, in front of a public. I was, as you can imagine, extremely nervous. I had decided to speak to the world directly, in my own way. I no longer felt the need to be like somebody else. I had learned the number pi. Pi being the most famous number in mathematics. It's an irrational number, which means you cannot express it as a fraction, and it's infinite in its decimal expansion, meaning that it goes on forever. Even if you had a piece of paper the size of the universe, you could never have enough space to write all of its digits down. In this number, pi, simple as a circle, yet complex enough to go on without end, I had found something that I could sing. I sat, and for over 5 hours, I recited this number from memory. 22,514 digits. I did not make one mistake. It was like speaking my first language. As I recited the digits, I felt that I spoke about myself. All of me. The whole of my life. Every moment. It was an act of complete self-disclosure. And as the mathematicians checked every digit for accuracy, the public listened. They came from every walk of life. Some wore ties and suits. Others had shorts and wore Mickey Mouse hats. There was one moment when all of a sudden my mind went blank. I had recited over 16,000 digits, and for one moment I could not remember anything at all. All of the colours, everything, the textures and the pictures, the shapes, everything disappeared. And then, after some moments, I started to feel an itching sensation in my head. The numbers came back to me. They returned to me. They were loyal to me. And it was like running a marathon. And the numbers, they came, and all that I had spoken of, all the things that I had lived through, all of my moments of happiness and joy, of sadness and loneliness, of despair and faith, they cheered me on. They were my audience. They were my public. When I finished at last, I looked up. The people were applauding me, but some of their faces had changed. The skin on their cheeks was wet. They'd been crying. Then I knew that what I had said in numbers had touched them somehow. Pi was like my love poem to a life, my own, that had been at once so strange and yet so familiar. Today, I write books and essays. I travel the world. I move ever forward, but I can never forget the place from where I come, the colors and shapes of my childhood, the people who taught me finally what it is to love and to be loved in return. Thank you. Gracias.